Hello, everyone. My name's Seth Bannon, and I'm going to be talking about where you can find the biggest profits and the most meaning in a new economic renaissance that's coming. So, as we all know, seeing trends before other people see them puts you in a very advantageous situation. It's one of the reasons why conferences like Slush are so valuable. And so I'm going to share with you a trend that's coming that most people still don't see yet. And so why do you want to see trends coming? Well, here are a few of the really big ones that have happened in the last 50 years of business. If you were an entrepreneur in 1975, you want to start Microsoft and not IBM. If you're an investor in 1994, you want to invest in Amazon and not a brick and mortar bookstore. And if you're a developer or designer or salesperson in 1997, you want to join Netflix and not a DVD seller. And so I'm going to talk about a trend that in many ways is even more fundamental than these, that's coming in the next few decades. And it centers around this question: what is the purpose of business? What is the role business plays in society? Currently, if you ask people what's the purpose of business, they'll give you some answer about money or job or finances. And this is sort of what's captured the common consciousness. The purpose of business is to maximize shareholder value. And this idea has its origins in a 1970 op-ed written by Milton Friedman, a Nobel Prize-winning economist. In fact, it's known as the Freedmen Doctrine. And this op-ed is so absurd that I just want to read to you a bit of it. And this is a quote. He says, "The businessmen who say that business is not concerned merely with profit, but also with promoting desirable social ends, and take seriously its responsibilities for providing employment, eliminating discrimination, avoiding pollution, and whatever else may be the catchwords of the contemporary crop of reformers, these businessmen are unwitting puppets of the intellectual forces that have been undermining the basis of free society these past decades." I don't need that anymore. And this is how people have thought about business for the past 50 years. Well, luckily, this idea is starting to be rejected. It's starting to be torn down. And in its place is being built up a much more inspiring notion of business. An idea that the purpose of business is both to generate profits and shareholder value, but also to improve society or protect the environment. And this trend is fueled largely by the young. There was a study done that asked millennials an open-ended question: what is the purpose of business? And 47% of them, a plurality, said some version of the purpose of business is to improve society or protect the environment. More than said anything about generating profits or making money. And so I'm going to walk you through some data that shows that this trend is real and significant. One of the most important things that we see happening is the rise of what's called the benefit corporation. So this is specific to the States, but these trends I think are quite global. So in the United States, if you have a normal corporation, you must focus on maximizing shareholder value. And you actually can't think about other things. For instance, if you decided that a manufacturing plant was polluting a river, so long as it wasn't, polluting it to illegal levels, if you decided to shut that plant down, but it didn't maximize shareholder value, your shareholders could sue you and they would have a very good case. Only in 2011 did 4 states introduce a new corporate entity form called the benefit corporation, which legally allows companies to consider social and environmental ends. And it's taking off. So this is the rise of benefit corporations since they were introduced a few years ago. And as you can see, this is a sort of hockey stick growth that all investors clamor for. And so why should all of you as entrepreneurs or investors or people looking to join companies care about any of this. This is probably the biggest reason. Your millennial employees are probably planning on leaving your company. So Deloitte did a study of 7,700 millennials across 29 countries, and they found that they're unhappy. And they're unhappy because their values do not align with their companies. 87% of the millennials surveyed said that the success of a business should be measured in terms of more than just its financial performance. But 54% of those millennials said that they believe that business was purely profit-driven. So they're unhappy, and they're planning on leaving. 25% said they planned on leaving their job in the next year, 44% in the next 2 years, and 66% planned on leaving within 4 years. And this isn't just junior employees. This is senior management. Millennials who are board directors, directors of divisions, or C-level employees, 57% of them planned on leaving within 4 years. This is a really big problem if you're running a business. And this trend is not just millennial do-gooders. There was a study done by Net Impact, which found that 83% of MBA students would take a 15% pay cut to work at a company that was creating positive social or societal impact. And these are the most money-grubbing people in a generation. And this trend is increasing rapidly. So 9 years ago, this number was 26%. And 5 years before that, it was 14%. So this is a consistent and sustained trend. And so the key here is that you need value alignment in order to have employee retention. And as I mentioned earlier, it is a global phenomenon. In the Deloitte study, which took place across 29 countries, in no country did more than 30% of the millennials surveyed say that financial performance should be the only metric for judging a business's success. And another interesting point is that this is not purely a matter of the talent war. It's also coming from sources of capital. So there's currently underway a $30 trillion wealth transfer, the largest in the history of the world, and it's coming from baby boomers, largely to millennials. Millennials have already demonstrated that they want to align their careers with their values, and they also want to align their capital with their values. So sources of capital are going to be flowing into these types of companies. And while this is fueled by the young, for sure, it's not limited to the young. Mark Benioff, founder and CEO of Salesforce, by no means a goody two-shoes millennial, said, quote, "The business of business isn't just about creating profits for shareholders, it's also about improving the state of the world." John Mackey, the CEO of Whole Foods, says business ought to operate with a higher purpose beyond profits. So while this is fueled by the young, the titans of industry are also embracing this idea. And why are they embracing it? This is the key. Impact companies outperform their peers when judged on a purely financial basis. There was one study done that showed that purpose-driven companies in the public markets outperformed their peers 10x, a full order of magnitude. Really big deal. There's a study done that shows that employees at purpose-driven and impact-driven companies identify with their company 300% more than their peers at non-impact companies. They are more creative and they're easier to retain. And I've seen this personally through my work investing at 50 Years, which is a seed fund that invests in entrepreneurs building massive businesses by solving some of the world's biggest problems with technology. And every day we see our portfolio companies benefiting in the ways that I just outlined. And not only do we sort of see this trend coming, but we also believe that this is a really good thing, because the proper role of business in society should not just be to generate profits and shareholder value. It can be so much more. We believe that business should solve the world's big problems. And I'm not talking about small or manufactured problems. So forget about decreasing enterprise churn by 17.4%, or pairing people with the perfect pair of socks, or making sure that someone can get sushi with a push of a button the second they have a craving. I'm talking about solving the climate crisis, feeding the world, diagnosing disease, educating everyone. Business can do this, and businesses that do are more profitable. This trend will be as big and as impactful as the transition from desktop to the cloud or from web to mobile. Over the next decades, people will be talking about the transition from profit-driven companies to profit plus impact-driven companies. And it's important that everyone embrace this, because it's not just about inspiration, it's also about profits. The most inspiring companies and the most profitable will be the ones that solve these big problems. And the world needs these companies. The world needs everyone in this room to found and work for these companies, because no one else is going to solve these problems, but business can. And so I hope that you will all join me in supporting this next revolution. Thanks.